G'day guys, Lee here, and in this video I'm going to go through 5 gear related tips to help you get started in soft plastics fishing. Tip number 1 is select a suitable rod. Now what I mean by that is your typical bait rods, these fiberglass type of things, they're really noodly, they don't have a lot of sensitivity and you can't really feel bites when you're working soft plastic lures. So what that means is if you're sitting here with this kind of rod, for example, and you're trying to work a plastic across through the water column, you see all that noodliness, doesn't really lend you to feel anything when you're actually working that lure. So detecting bites is a lot harder when you're using that sort of gear. So you think you can put across a bait rod as a soft plastics rod? Yes, there are no rules in fishing, but it's going to be a lot harder for you to achieve the desired result when you're fishing with them. So what we usually recommend is something lightweight, usually graphite if you can get away with it. Obviously buy something you can afford, it's in your price range. 7 foot's good length as far as a rule of thumb goes, especially for land-based fishing, and something in either a fast or a extra fast taper. So what that means is it's going to be able to take up a lot of line slack really quickly and allow you to set hooks into those single hook lures that you're using plastic. So good idea to use that kind of rod. Number 2 would have to be hand in hand with your rod is your reel. Now you want to select a good size reel that suits the gear that you're using. So this 7 foot, 2 to 4 kilo, general purpose light gear soft plastics fishing will go hand in hand with something like a 2,500 size reel. It's going to pretty much do most applications for you. If you look at it more finesse and really lightweight stuff, down to your 1 to 3 kilo sort of size reels and things, size rods and things like that, you're probably looking at more a 1 or 2,000 size reel, just to go with that. Another point with a reel is a really good smooth drag system is important, as that's going to allow the line to come off real nicely and allow the rod to do the work, keeping the hook in the fish for you. Last with the overall outfit would have to be line. Now line can be overlooked sometimes, and it's important to have a good line that's suitable to the type of application. In the case of soft plastics fishing, a PE or braided line, in other words, is ideal in this sense, because braid or PE doesn't have much stretch or any stretch at all. It allows much more sensitivity to your hand when allowing you to try and feel for bites. When you're using quite a lot of loose line allowing the lure to drop, you want to really feel everything that you're working through in that water column, and having a braided line is always going to be a better option in that case. In the case of braid, because it doesn't have really good abrasion resistance, you're probably looking at needing to run a leader material as well, and that would be recommended to be used a fluorocarbon leader, as it sinks and it also offers minimal stretch, less stretch than monofilament line, for example. Number 4 would have to be your jig heads. Now you'll need a good range of different size and jig heads depending on the plastics you plan on using. Okay, so ranges in hook size and also weight as well. You want to try and get away with the lightest jig head possible for the conditions you're fishing in. Now that might vary depending on your wind or tide and current and things like that. So you have to take quite a bit of a range to cover all bases. You have to kind of experiment with jig heads. There's no real hard and fast with that sort of thing. So taking a good range of jig heads is definitely a must. So when I approach a body of water that I'm planning on fishing with, when it comes to selecting a jig head size, I usually start lighter. Now this is just a preference of myself. I don't want to be jamming myself into the bottom into unknown snag territory and losing jig heads in 5 seconds. I want to just feel out the higher water column areas first. If I'm not getting a good enough drop with my jig head in that case, and like say there's a bit more current hanging around, I'll usually go a bit heavier. Say I start with a 1/16 weight jig head to start with. If it's getting taken, like line getting taken by current, I'll have to up my jig head size as a result of that. So it'll get a more accurate drop or a more presentable drop in that case. And then again, if wind's in the way and it can't get cast distance, you'll need to go heavier again. It's just really adapting and fishing to the conditions you're currently in, and that's it. There's really 3 basic fundamental soft plastic types you should really think about owning or buying for starters. It doesn't really matter too much what brand. They all do a fairly similar job, and they have a pretty wide operation range. So in the case of the fishing we're doing today, we're usually using about like 2-inch to 3-inch size plastics because there tends to be that size bait in this system. Now that might be different in your local system. You just have to really learn what kind of forage is in those systems and use the correct size plastics to match the hatch, so to speak. Now, the types of plastics I'm referring to, your stock standard paddle tail plastics like your Munros paddle tails are a really good go-to. Your Crush City plastics and new Rapala stuff is really good, and I'm really loving that stuff at the moment. You can't beat a grub. A grub really does everything and anything. They mimic things like shrimp and other smaller bait forage that's in their systems, and everything eats a prawn or a shrimp. Everything. Grubs are definitely a go-to, and probably your best start and first lure to try and use, because they give you probably your best chances out of all of them. Third, are a bit more specific. Now that is called a creature bait. Now these are usually smaller profile lures. When I say profile, I'm talking about the overall size of the lure and presence in the water is less. They're more finesse, so you're working them slower off the bottom, things like that, and they better mimic things like small little crustaceans, little nymphs and minnows and stuff like that that you wouldn't normally see presented as a bait fish pattern sort of thing. So that's what a creature bait is. Usually have way more appendages and little frilly bits to come off. A good example of that is something called an OSP dice, which is basically a cube with 100 legs hanging off it about this long. They're really nuts looking, but I can tell you now, brim absolutely hammer them. Get a look at those sorts of lures. Don't have to buy the whole shop, just buy those key 3 types and have a go. It's got a nice lay down log here, and the flow's going down this way. I'm just going to pitch it up to where the pharagmite hits the water over there. I'll piff it up there and see what happens. Hopefully we get a nice, well that wasn't very far, but we get a nice little drop in there, maybe a tick in the line hopefully. And we're snagged. There we go, we're off. Yes! Got him! Little ready. I was just rolling it towards the tree there. I got a bump and I sort of hit it, but I didn't feel him hook up, but he was swimming towards me, that'd be why. There we have it guys, a weeny little redfin, only a small guy, but textbook hook up right on the top of the lip there, you'll see that. That was on a weedless presentation, but on that stock standard motor oil grub, like I said, that's one of the fundamental lures, and sometimes they can be the difference between getting a bite or not. Really, really cool. This little dude came and hit it on the drop. I saw the line tick. I set hooks, but I didn't feel anything, and then I realized he was actually making away with it, swimming towards me. So they're pretty fish, got these nice little red markings and that. It's not illegal to throw these guys back, so I'm actually going to do that in this case. So besides that, these provide for a fair bit of food for some of our native species that are in here as well. So off to go. Hopefully you get eaten and snacked on by a nice sized cod. All right buddy, getting wet. See ya. Rightio guys, so just proof of concept. With that, you can catch fish on plastics. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Anyways, if you'd like to see more, subscribe, hit the like button, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot for our members. Thanks a lot for your membership and your support. We'll see you soon.